The Last of Us Part 2 review embargo is over, and now the reviews have come out. It's a masterpiece! Yay! Apart from some very noticeable absentees from the reviews. Hi everyone, it's Az here from HeelvsBabyface. Yes, the review embargo for The Last of Us Part 2 has been lifted. And yes, this will be the marketing tool that will go around everywhere. So people will see it in the windows, they'll see it in the advertisements, etc. They'll see it on the TV screens when they view stuff. And people who don't come online to watch videos, YouTube, websites, your casual gamer that will just look and say, oh, this got a 10 out of 10. Yeah, it's going to pick up some sales. There's absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. But just a quick closer look at which companies are being used. We got this covered. Oh my God, you know you're scraping the bottom of the barrel then. Hardcore Gamer, Gaming Trend, using the Telegraph and the Guardian, Gameblog.fr. Okay. So they're not exactly what we'd call pinnacles of the community. But there's also a couple of massive absentees from this list. And when I say massive, I'm talking massive in terms of Shill Media. And those two omissions, Kotaku and Polygon. Two websites that would shill all day, every day. Two websites that are activists as opposed to journalists that will push the narrative forward whenever they possibly can. So why are they missing? And why isn't this painting what I would say is the true picture of The Last of Us Part 2? Now, you're well within your rights of saying, yeah, but Az, aren't you coming at this from a biased perspective? Naughty Dog, Sony, Muso, they tried to take down your YouTube channel for discussing the leaks. They tried to destroy your livelihood. So you are going to be affected by that. Yeah, I fully get that. However, before any of the copyright strikes by Sony and Naughty Dog and Muso hit my channel, when I did my video about the leaks and about my concerns about the story, that was the concern that I had, the story of The Last of Us Part 2, I did stress at the end of the video that when the reviews come out, I would look at the ones that I believe came from trustworthy people, not shill media, and I would make my determination based off that. If they came back and said, look, this Last of Us Part 2 story is fantastic. Yes, there's uncomfortable moments that you may or may not like, but you have to experience everything in its entirety and its full context to understand what's going on, and it's well worth the look. Then I would pick up the game at some point, without doubt. I would trust their word on that. One of those said reviews is SkillUp. I do think that he puts out some very good reviews when it comes to video games, and there are others, Angry Joe, etc. And I don't necessarily have to agree with these people all the time. I don't. I have many disagreements with how I feel takes are with people like SkillUp and Angry Joe, but I trust their judgment when it comes to games. So this is what SkillUp had to say when his review for The Last of Us Part 2 dropped today about the story. And this is just a specific tidbit, and I thoroughly recommend, and I'm actually going to put the link in the description box down below, that you check out his review for The Last of Us Part 2 in its entirety. But this is pretty scathing.
More terminally, the story of the game is a complete mess, foregoing any of the relationships, themes, and tones that were central to the first game, and replacing them with a petty revenge story driven by unlikable characters making decisions that seem ridiculous and unbelievable.
So, pretty harsh criticism there. But this is exactly what I said and what a lot of people were saying when the leaks came out, judging by the story that was being painted in front of us. And we were saying that this seems to have just devolved into a petty revenge story, that major characters are being disrespected by that. And Skillet goes on to say, many other things in relation to this. This is one of the reasons why I thoroughly suggest that you go check out the review in its entirety to see everything in its full context. Oh, but you could have just taken that clip out of context. Listen to the whole review. It's not a glower by any stretch of the imagination. So let's go to another not so hot. Now this is IGN, but this is IGN Japan. And we're working off a Google Translate here. But they start with their tagline of, a sequel with various problems. I was too conscious of the previous work of masterpiece. So essentially what they're saying is the first game is a masterpiece. I absolutely agree. I think The Last of Us Part 1 was just a beautiful, amazing game with an amazing story, with amazing characters. It's the characters and the story to me that really made it what it was. Ellie and Joel were the absolute heart and soul of the Last of Us franchise. Well, yeah, going forward, And if we scroll down and we get problems with the new characters, structural defects in storytelling. Now, this is interesting because this is IGN Japan, whereas we saw on the review scores that the IGN in the West had given it a 10 out of 10. Now let's just jump to Polygon and an article that came out in October of 2017. And this article seemed to be precipitated because of the trailer of The Last of Us Part 2 that introduces to the character of Abby Smash. And Abby Smash was being dragged by a group of cultists, shall we say, hung up and placed on a stool where she could only keep her tippy toes there, and was going to be gutted alive, something that we had seen later on in gameplay footage when it was released. And although I don't necessarily agree with the subject heading here, I don't think there's any problem with selling your game how you want to sell your game, or using the theme of what you want to use, because there's a distinct difference between fantasy and reality, and there isn't any correlation between fantasy violence and reality violence whatsoever. It's been disproven time and time again. So by all means, when you're in a fantasy, have a fantasy, live out a fantasy in a fantasy world. But what I thought was going to be interesting was when other more acceptable activist-esque ideologies suddenly came to light in The Last of Us Part 2, whether or not Polygon would change their tune. But we can see that they're missing from the list, and not really. In actual fact, The Last of Us Part 2 review, we're better than this. This is coming from Polygon, believe it or not. And it really goes in to say about how the depiction of the future fails to escape its own past. The review essentially operates around the system of the ultra-violent nature of the game, while your character is not actually able to escape that. So the game seems to come across in a moral and lectury way of, this is human nature, we're just going to be these debased, debauched, down to the last person, petty revenge people, while not allowing your character any growth or any decision-making processes to avoid that. So it very much puts itself into a rut and then tries to moralize at you for doing the things that you can't help but do because the gameplay only allows you to do those certain things. Fair point. Then we go to Kotaku. Yes, Kotaku. The Last of Us Part 2, the Kotaku review. And if we go down to the bottom here and get their summation, it's difficult to talk about all of this a week before most of you reading can play the game for yourself. In a recent fawning piece. That's interesting. Kotaku criticizing GQ for a shill piece. My God, we are truly in the end days. Cuckman is quoted as saying, there were people at Naughty Dog, a minority of them, defensive there, Neil, that were just stuck on how violent the game is and how dark and cynical it is about mankind. That even the people who made the game are divided about it is a clear sign that players are going to have radically different experiences. And once again, this sort of mirrors Skill Up's review, who likens The Last of Us Part 2 story to laughable, Season 8 Game of Thrones, and Star Wars The Last Jedi, which is probably the worst praise that you could possibly give when it turns into relation of describing the story. The story, by the way, that in the first Last of Us game was driven by crazy good characters, Ellie and Joel. Even their dour situation, even everything that was horrific and horrendous going on in the world with the clickers, with the desolation of mankind, with the loss of their friends, the bond and the hope between those two characters bound them together. And of course, there was that wonderful moment towards the end of the game when they pet the giraffe, the wild giraffe who were just walking the streets. And it kind of had this hopeful, sort of upbeat-esque moment that although things are bad, although the world has fallen apart, there is still beauty here, and beauty in mankind and appreciation in mankind. However, this nihilistic version of The Last of Us Part 2, and another thing that said the deconstruction of the characters that we once loved into something completely different, I think is going to be exceptionally divisive when it comes to The Last of Us Part 2. Initially, I think sales are going to be strong. I've maintained this. I think it's going to be the way. Sales are going to be strong to start with, but I think once people start to play the game, once the mass audience starts to play the game, I think we're going to see a very quick slowing down of sales, and I think we're going to see a very divisive voice come out about the game. Oh, it's great, it's wonderful. Oh, God, it's terrible, it's awful. And that is not what you want when you're releasing a AAA title. The amount of money that must have been invested in this is obscene. And so if you're putting out a AAA title, then you really do have to make it as important and as open to everyone as possible. If you want to construct an indie game, if you want to construct a thought piece, do it on your own dime, not Sony's, in the case of Naughty Dogs. But there we go, folks. The big shill medias, Polygon, Kotaku, and even IGN in Japan. Nope. Trusted reviewers, Skill Up. Nope. But don't worry, folks. Shill Media, 10 out of 10, masterpiece. Hope you enjoyed the vid. If you did, do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Follow me on social media and Twitch and YouTube for live streaming. Still getting the hang of that. Links are in the description box down below, and I'll be back with some more stuff very soon. You take care. Bye for now.